Hey, it is season finale. The season finale of RuPaul's Drag Race UK. Here are my notes. Episode 8, RuPaul's Drag Race UK grand finale. So they each have 3 wins, but they're not quite even. So some of those were solo wins, some of those were double wins, some of those were triple wins. But we can't really say if RuPaul had been forced to pick just one, who would have gotten what. So the one thing we can say is Davina DeCampo was never in the bottom, never I almost said lip sync. That's the past tense of lip sync. Had never lip sync. I have to warn you, I came back from church, I had myself a mango Rita, and then I had a strawberry Rita, and then I had a lime Rita, and despite that being like 5 hours ago, I'm still a little bit buzzed. So I watched the episode, and so my thoughts might be a little bit fractured. I found that people don't really watch the recaps on the finale because it's all done. Whatever feelings they had have concluded, but I'm finishing it because a very nice fan said that they wanted to see it. And because it's good just to finish it off, so in case anybody ever comes back and wants to see my opinion. So I feel like the first thing they did, or not the first thing, but one of the things that they did this episode was they had the podcast bit. And I feel like what that did for me was it pulled them all up even. So whatever feelings you had about Baga, I feel like when she talks about the fact that she's only talked to her mom 7 times after the past 10 years, and that she's not at all angry, but she was raised, but in her teenage years, she lived with her nan, with her grandmother, because her mom remarried and had a new family. Kind of like, I feel like whatever feelings you had about her and her mom, you kind of went, oh, I get it. Like, she didn't throw her mom under the bus, but the fact that she didn't live with her mom in her teenage years and her mom remarried and started a new family, you kind of go, okay, so if there's maybe some lingering tension, I kind of get it. And so that was kind of, for me, that kind of pulled the storyline for Baga, my feelings for Baga, back to an even keel. I actually didn't have any problems with the interaction with her mom, but a lot of people did. I don't know, maybe I just have mom issues, but it doesn't matter. It didn't bother me as much. It seemed like whether it was good or bad, it was realistic and it wasn't hateful. But anyway, a lot of people had problems with her and her mom, and I feel like the podcast brought us back to neutral. Same with Davina DeCampo. I like Davina DeCampo, but she did kind of let the Vivian get underneath her skin, and the Vivian did kind of get underneath her skin. But anyway, she had the opportunity in the podcast to kind of be like, hey, that was my problem, I shouldn't have done that. Brings her back to an even. Same thing with Vivian. So I feel like the podcast dialogue, I left each and every episode feeling like, oh, I like this person. If they win, that's fine. And that kind of bring my emotions back to kind of a neutral position. Now, I think that's what it was supposed to do. It seems like a lot of people, I try not to look online because that affects my vision, my view, and I did like spend literally 30 seconds online after I finished the episode 2 minutes ago, and it does seem like there's some pretty strong feelings, so that might have slightly affected. I liked all 3. This was not a case of like Tyra Sanchez versus, you know what I mean, like where you were like, oh, whatever happens, please, 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 please let someone else win, and then they win, and you go, no. I just didn't like Tyra Sanchez. It was hard to root for her the whole season. And I think that the lesson that RuPaul learned was that no matter how much someone is technically perform well, you kind of want to go with someone who's likable. And now, to be clear, I've never tweeted at any of the queens, ever, positive, negative. If they go and they look for my recaps and they have an opinion on it, that's their right. But as someone else who's a creative and does get reviews, it's part of the business. I hope that if someone was to watch it, they would see this as my opinion. I don't hate any of these people. I'm not looking to destroy their lives. This is my opinion on their performance in one aspect of their career. So Like I said, that margarita really hit me hard. So I'm sorry that I'm a little kind of discombobulated. We see Davina De Campo really being like, I can dance, I can sing, and she can dance, and she can sing. And that made me a little nervous because it felt like it was all too convenient, and that never works out well in reality shows. We see the other two struggle, a little bit more awkward, a little bit more like, Gah! You know, like a little bit more, you know, grandma's on stage. Not in the fact that they're old, but just in like a certain kind of like, I don't feel comfortable with this. We didn't see anything of them recording. So when the song came on at the end and they all were singing, I was like, oh, that's right, they recorded. But apparently there wasn't enough time for that. We saw them dancing. Davina De Campo was like way up here. But, you know, technical prowess isn't the only thing. There's a lot of character. There's a lot of like laughing and fun. I thought all three of them did really well. I think that's one of the things that RuPaul is, the show, Drag Race, has done better at, is to have three, is that our finales more and more, I feel like, are three people that I'm really cheering for. A lot of people have really strong feelings on who, I knew it was going to be really tough for Baga to make up for the fact that she'd been the bottom the last couple times. And so that's a really tough place to come back from. I felt that when they got to that, why should you be the winner, I thought that they each answered really appropriately for their place in the competition. And what I mean is, Baga had been at the bottom a couple times, so I feel like Baga coming out with this very humble, very just very humble answer was a good strategic and endearing way to handle it, because we all know that she'd been the bottom a couple times, had a rough bit. So to come in and say, oh my gosh, I can't say these two people are amazing, makes you go, no, come on, Baga, you've got plenty of good qualities. And like in your mind, you are filling in for what she didn't say. Now, if she had come out there and been like, I'm a right, whatever their British term is, you know, and I'm better than everyone else, your mind would automatically go, but is she, wasn't she in the bottom a couple weeks recently? And how can she say she's better than Davina De Campo, who's never been in the bottom? So I felt like, I know Michelle had a little bit of a problem with her not saying that. And she's so funny because I've heard from Queen say that Michelle is, as tough as she is as a judge, when they tour with her, she's like right there with them. She is cheering for them. She's wanting their best. We don't see that as much in this show. Not to say that she's bad. They just say she is a really tough judge. But what that all said was funny is when someone disagrees with her, her face is like I will cut you. And that always cracks me up. So when she was saying it was a problem that Baga wasn't more like, go me, and then Graham Norton was like, oh, that's a very British response, which from what I hear is true. I'm no Anglophile. I can't say that I'm some expert on the UK, so I'm not going to pretend. But from what I know of people who are British, one of my closest friends is married to a man who's British. This is very much how she describes her husband, is like, they wouldn't possibly say that. So when Graham Norton was like, oh, it's a very British thing to say, and she's like, oh, that was hilarious. So then Davina De Campo, on the other hand, is the more edgy drag, I think might be the word, whereas Baga and Vivian are very traditional camp, which I love. I love that. I feel like one of the things I loved about the British was that the British version of the show was that we saw camp and we saw it do really well. Normally on the US version, we don't get to see them go quite as far. And I love the camp version. I love the fun version. The fun version that doesn't take themselves too seriously and is kind of mumsy and all that. Which is when Baga came out in her outfit and they were like, it's 1980s Dolly Parton, I was like, she wishes. This is Carol Channing. This is like Carol Channing's like raspberries. Like this is mumsy, matronly, and I loved it. I loved it. I love it. I love it when a lot of drag queens go really sexy, and that's great, and I can like that, but I really enjoy something different. So I love Baga, and Vivian has that same kind of vibe. And so part of me was going, I don't think they're both going to make it. I don't think Vivian and Baga are both going to make it into the final two. If they have one, I wasn't totally sure. It was very, I wasn't totally sure. And one thing I'm not sure of is if they filmed 6 alternate endings, one where Vivian was out earlier, one was Baga was out, one where Divina De Campo was out first, and then had the remaining 2, that's 6 permutations. So had them, I think that's 6 permutations. It actually might be 3. Yeah, it was 6. So one version where each one of them was out first, and then of those 3 versions, 2 different versions where the person on the left won, the person on the right, person on the left, person, so that's 6 permutations. I don't know if they did that. I don't know whether they just got all the queens there so that if anybody was like, oh, well, Baga, you know, whether they had them just waiting, if they did, if they had, what is that, 8? Oh, gosh, I can't remember. However many there were, I guess 10, and they did 2 days. They might have just held everyone for 3 weeks. I don't know. I don't know how they did it. There's a drag queen out there who wants to tell me. I'm super interested in all the production stuff behind the scenes, but it's probably in your contract, you can't tell. But anyway, I knew it was, I don't know if they did it's very likely they filmed multiple versions so that nobody knew. That's one way they do it, to keep it secret. And the drag queens don't actually know. I'm sure if I went online and Googled, I could find out. I don't want to go online and Google. So there you go. So anyway, so Baga came out, she was very Carol Channing. I loved it. I loved it. This reminds me of the classic British TV shows that I watch on TV, and a lot of the classic US shows that were long before my time. It just has that feel to it, and I love that. She was incredibly gracious, which is the smartest thing to do. Her being like, thank you, I'm just glad to be here. That is the best way to win. She has left I want to see more of her. I'll gladly watch her show. She's won the heart and minds of me, I assume the US and UK. So let's get down to Divina and Vivian. I haven't said a lot about Vivian. Vivian has been solid, won the first challenge, has had some stumbles, and I feel like, and Michelle mentioned this, when Vivian had the fall in the girls group, it really humanized her. So she went from being this, I'm so perfect, I'm so great, which is not only RuPaul's, but sometimes her attitude. It gave us a chance to see, no, there's a real person underneath there. That real person is vulnerable. That real person is not 100%, oh, I'm so great. Is someone who comments on your YouTube channel when you get something wrong. That last one might be a little personal to me in my last video. But I have no problem with Vivian. Vivian is a kind of a camp classic, a kind of a campy queen. And when I say camp, I mean that only the best ways. Taking the best from our history, from the things that we love kind of culturally, our mid-century modern aesthetic, our 70s, our 80s, the things that we love, and captures it and brings it on stage. And it doesn't have to all be raw sensuality. Not to say that she's not beautiful. I thought her final outfit was by far, was incredibly beautiful, incredibly polished. It has this air to it that reminds me of RuPaul. Like when RuPaul comes out on the runway and does this flourish, and the makeup is so perfect that you would believe that she's not wearing any, because it's just so smooth. It doesn't look like makeup. It just looks like the most dewy, perfect skin. Vivian has that feel of just velvety smooth polish. Divina De Campo doesn't have that, but she has that edge. She has that kind of like, what are you going to do next feel. I'm super happy with both of them. And in the and when I said, I told my husband I think the Vivian's going to win, and spoiler alert, the Vivian won. I'm not upset with this decision. People seem really upset on Twitter. Now that's just the first couple tweets. That doesn't actually mean that's what happens. You cannot trust Twitter as the end all be all of how people feel, but it's just what I saw when I looked on Twitter. I don't have a problem with it. I think Divina De Campo will do amazing. I think Divina De Campo might have sort of a Katya sort of career, which is bridesmaid, never bride. Never could really grab that, but carries themselves on pure personality. But I don't have a problem with Vivian winning either. I think she put up good numbers, had great performances. Davina DeCampo might be a little bit more up, down, up, down, up, down. I really loved Davina a lot. But the Vivian, I feel like, was up more, and her down was more of a vulnerability thing. I don't know. I'm not mad about the results. If Davina had won, I don't think I'd be mad at the results either. I thought it was a really super solid top 3. I think Baga going out first, I think that's fair. She didn't perform well enough to overcome. The last episode is a little bit where I think they zoom out a little bit and they judge on more. The last episode really doesn't do that much. That's where they get their YouTube song that's going to play in all the clubs. They're going to get their royalties. They do the kind of wrap up. You kind of see if anybody flops. I don't think anyone really flopped. I think Davina did really well, but you know, this isn't World of Dance or America's Next Top Dancer, so I get that skill alone couldn't pull her ahead. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know. Convince me otherwise. You feel like someone was robbed? Convince me. I'm open to it. I really am. Otherwise, excuse me, I will see you when the next Drag Race premieres. Okay? Bye.